Good day. This lecture provides a concise overview of tortious interference under Philippine law, specifically focusing on its relevance to obligations and contracts, as well as torts and damages for the bar examinations. Philippine contract law, as embodied in Articles 1159 and 1311 of the Civil Code, underscores the principles of obligatory force and relativity of contracts. Generally, contractual obligations and rights are confined to the contracting parties, their assigns, and heirs. The doctrine of privity of contract typically excludes third parties from acquiring rights or incurring obligations. However, Article 1314 of the Civil Code introduces a significant exception. Any third person who induces another to violate his contract shall be liable for damages to the other contracting party. This provision safeguards the proprietary interest inherent in a valid contract against unwarranted interference. The cause of action for tortious interference arises not from the contract itself, but from quasi-delict or tort as governed by the principles of human relations under Articles 19 to 21 and quasi-delicts under Article 2176 of the Civil Code. Article 1314 serves to balance the principle of contract relativity found in Article 1311 with the broader tortious duty to respect the established rights of others. Philippine jurisprudence has established three essential elements for a claim of tortious interference. 1. Existence of a valid contract. The contract that has been interfered with must be legally valid and enforceable. Claims of tortious interference will likely fail if the underlying contract is void, unenforceable, or has been validly rescinded or annulled. 2. Knowledge by the third person of the contract's existence. The interfering party must have knowledge of the existence of the valid contract. As established in the 2005 Supreme Court case of Lagon versus Court of Appeals, ignorance of the contract negates liability for tortious interference. The burden of proof to establish this knowledge rests upon the plaintiff. Third, interference by the third person without legal justification or excuse. The third party must actively induce or cause the breach of the contract, and this interference must be considered improper or wrongful under the circumstances. It is crucial to note that not all interference is actionable. Interference that is legally justified will not give rise to liability. Regarding the role of malice, the 1999 Supreme Court case of Soping Bon versus Court of Appeals clarified that while malice or ill will is not a prerequisite to establish the fact of interference itself, and thus allow for remedies such as injunction, it is a crucial element for the recovery of damages, including actual, moral, and exemplary damages. The absence of malice generally precludes an award for these types of damages. Turning to legitimate business interest, acting to advance one's own economic interests is recognized as a primary justification for interference, provided that no improper means are employed. This principle was applied in the Soping Bon case concerning the securing of warehouse space, the Lagon case involving property acquisition, and the 2021 Supreme Court case of GMA Network, Inc. versus Cruz Valdez, which involved the hiring of talent for an executive position. Finally, regarding competition, fair competition is generally considered a privileged form of interference. However, this privilege does not extend to competition achieved through wrongful means, such as fraud, defamation, coercion, or other illegal acts. In summary, interference that is motivated by legitimate economic self-interest and is carried out without malice or the use of wrongful means is often deemed justified and typically does not result in liability for damages. It is also important to recognize that an induced breach of contract can give rise to two distinct causes of action, one against the breaching party based on the contract itself, and another against the interfering third party based on tort. The liability of these parties may be solidary. Now, let us examine the concept of interference with prospective economic advantage. This tortious action protects potential business relationships or expectancies that have not yet been formalized into binding contracts. The elements generally include 1. A reasonable expectancy of an economic benefit or advantage. 2. The defendant's knowledge of this expectancy. 3. Intentional interference by the defendant. 4. Improper means or purpose on the part of the defendant without justification. And 5. A causal link between the interference and resulting damage to the plaintiff. The key distinction from tortious interference with an existing contract under Article 1314 is the absence of a pre-existing contractual relationship. Competition serves as a stronger justification in cases involving prospective economic advantage. However, this justification is negated if the defendant employs wrongful means in their interference. The legal basis for this tort lies in the general principles of tort law as embodied in Articles 19 to 21, 28, and 2176 of the Civil Code. Several defenses may be raised against a claim of interference with prospective economic advantage. 1. Absence of an element. The plaintiff fails to prove the existence of one or more of the essential elements of the tort, such as a reasonable expectancy, the defendant's knowledge, intentional interference or causation, or resulting damage. 2. Justification or privilege. The defendant's actions were justified or privileged. Common justifications include legitimate business interest, fair competition, providing truthful information or honest advice, and acting in the protection of public interest or pursuant to a fiduciary duty. Third, absence of malice. The lack of malice on the part of the defendant can defeat claims for actual moral and exemplary damages. Fourth, plaintiff's own breach. If the plaintiff's own actions or breach contributed to the loss of the prospective economic advantage, this can weaken their claim against the defendant. It is crucial to remember that these defenses will generally fail if the defendant employed wrongful means in their interference. Moving on to the remedies for tortious interference. First, damages may be awarded under Article 1314. These can include 1. Actual or compensatory damages, awarded to compensate for proven pecuniary losses suffered by the plaintiff as a direct result of the interference. 2. Moral damages, may be awarded upon proof that the defendant's malicious or bad faith interference caused mental anguish, serious anxiety, wounded feelings, moral shock, or similar injury to the plaintiff. 3. Exemplary damages may be imposed by way of example or correction if the defendant acted with malice, bad faith, or gross negligence. 4. Attorney's fees may be granted if the plaintiff was compelled to litigate to protect their rights due to the defendant's tortious conduct. Additional remedies may include injunction, which is a court order prohibiting the interfering party from continuing their disruptive actions, and annulment of the interfering contract if such a contract was the means by which the interference was carried out. It is important to reiterate that liability may be solidary, meaning the interfering third party and the breaching contracting party may be held jointly and severally liable to the injured party. Finally, take note of the concept of damnum absque injuria, which means damage without legal injury. If the interference is deemed legally justified, any resulting harm to the plaintiff is considered damnum absque injuria, and no legal remedy will be available. In conclusion, tortious interference under Article 1314 provides crucial protection to contractual rights against unwarranted third-party intrusion through the principles of quasi-delict. For your bar exam preparation, remember the following key takeaways. 1. Know the three elements: a valid contract, the interferer's knowledge of the contract, and unjustified interference. 2. Focus on justification. Legitimate business interest and fair competition are significant defenses unless wrongful means were used. 3. Malice dictates damages. The absence of malice generally prevents the recovery of most forms of damages. 4. Remember landmark cases. So Pingbon, Lagon, and GMA Network provide crucial insights into the application of these principles. 5. Distinguish from breach of contract. Tortious interference involves a different wrongdoer, a third party, and a distinct source of liability. Tort. Sixth note, prospective advantage. A broader tort exists to protect potential economic relationships under Articles 19 to 21, 28, and 2176. 7. Identify defenses. These include the lack of an essential element, especially knowledge, valid justification, and the absence of malice for damage claims. 8. Apply to scenarios. Practice analyzing common scenarios involving poaching of employees, lease agreements, and other contractual relationships. When analyzing bar exam problems related to tortious interference, systematically examine the presence of the essential elements, carefully evaluate any potential justifications for the interference, paying close attention to the motives and means employed, and determine whether malice is present, as this will be crucial for assessing the availability of damages. Thank you for your attention.